Hello, all saints. My name is Swanson, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm missing you so much during this time. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of your faces. As we gather through this video, I know that God's with us even if we aren't able to share space. Bear with me because sharing my faith is definitely not something I would normally do by video. You might get me to do it one-on-one or in a small group, or frankly not at all. So be patient with me as I move through this in trying to share some of my favorite learnings as well as my faith. I want to start with a reading from Ecclesiastes chapter 3. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. If I was in the same room as you and asked what time is it, most would automatically look to a watch, to a phone, or to the nearest clock. Did you know that there's no concept or word for a minute in the Bible? The word hour is found only in the New Testament. The most used reference to time in the Bible is day, with year a distant second, followed by month and season. Our culture has taught us to become so concerned with the minutes of our lives that we are losing our hours, our days, our years, and our seasons. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, "Time is the most valuable thing that we have because it is the most irrevocable." So, what time is it? For citizens of the United States and across the world, it's a time of illness and despair. It's a time of economic downturn and the potential loss of those that we know and hold dear. It's a time of worry and concern over unstable fuel prices. The things that usually mark this time of year for us are quickly becoming intangible. Community events, church services, sporting events, school, proms and graduations, birthday parties, weddings. The list goes on and on of the good times that we're focused on missing. Last week was the first day of spring. We know that temperatures will become warmer, leaves and flowers will bud, bloom, and grow, farmers are going to plant their crops, and a first time for most, a lot of students and a lot of people across the U.S. are moving to telework and online school, and now many are jobless. We grieve the loss of time in the way of events, activities, and relationships. This surreal lifestyle has become our reality, and yet we can hardly believe that we find ourselves in our homes looking out and wishing we could hold the hand of our neighbor to pray. I see the person who is not chained to some type of a timekeeping instrument as very fortunate. Our modern lives have become so entangled with the minutes of the day that we have, for the most part, lost sight of God's time. I personally have lost sight of God's time. My most recent bouts with my faith have been in the last 4 years. I became a full-time mom to 5 kids. My 3 stepchildren, Julian, Alina, and Elijah, and 2 little boys, Jaron and Brevin. Pregnancy and family blending are difficult, and it was difficult. To put it mildly, I am not a good pregnant woman. As much as I wanted to glow and smile and be happy to finally have my own children, I was miserable. My first pregnancy was better than my second. While pregnant with Brevin, my 10-month-old, I was constantly sick. I quit everything. I quit going to church. I quit spending time with friends. I withdrew from my family. And I fought to stay on the surface as a wife, mom, and a business owner. I was diagnosed with prenatal depression halfway through my second pregnancy. Postpartum depression is so very real. It is sometimes dark, and it's definitely lonely. That isn't because of a lack of A lack of support from my husband, Aaron. He is fantastic. It isn't because my children are terrible. They are wonderful. And it isn't because friends and family haven't tried to support or uplift me. They have all done everything they can to lift me through these dark times. I want to make sure that people also know, just offhand, that it isn't a lack of appreciation of the gift of being a mother. This is something that we don't have control of, and we really wish we did. I know some of you are watching this and you can't believe it. I'm very accustomed to wearing the mask of happiness. We talk about masks a lot these days. But right now, the mask I'm talking about is the one of putting on a smiling face, the one that says, I am okay. I don't want others to think that I'm ungrateful for being a mom or a wife. I don't want others to see me as weak. I don't want to be vulnerable. And I certainly don't, above all things, want anybody to think that I'm faithless. One thing that has stood out to me through my postpartum trial is the need to track time. What time I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't sleep, the time of day when I feel the most exhausted, the number of days in a row where I struggle to get dressed. The tracking of time has been a downfall for me as I become focused on how long my sorrows have been going on versus finding the little joys in every day. I'm struggling to look out for Jesus because I can't stop looking at the darkness in myself. I try to remember that there's a time for everything, but it is hard. I find myself watching what's happening in our world right now with my heart hurting, my hands clasped, cried. I have mourned and I've gone numb at times. I've shut off the TV and I've put away news articles and I've tried to focus on our family and how we're going to push through. The impact of what's happening around us is not only going to be hard on me, but it's going to be hard on you as well. It will be hard on the person sitting next to you and the person next door. I'm not trying to keep time of how many days, hours, and minutes are passing as COVID-19 is knocking on our doors. It's too hard. I'm wanting to tell you about this for a reason, not that faith comes out of our bad times, but because Jesus shines brighter in our darkest times. I want to geek out on some Greek before getting to my final point. There are 2 Greek words used in the Bible that describe 2 concepts of time. The first is chronos, from which we get the English words chronology and chronometer. Chronos is time from a man's point of view. It can be measured and divided into components of seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years. We complain of our chaotic lives in reference to time, but just think how chaotic the world would be without standards of time. God, who exists outside of the standards of time, is not very concerned with chronos. He is more concerned with the other Greek word for time, kairos, which means fullness of time or the right time. Kairos is not dependent on clocks, calendars, or chronometers. Kairos, the right time, is always determined by God. A good analogy for kairos is the ripening of fruit. The time a fruit develops and ripens on a tree is measurable by chronos. The perfect time for harvest can only be determined by its ripeness. That is kairos, the right time. Chronos and kairos are 2 totally different time frames. Chronos is measurable and totally human. Kairos is eternal and divine. So how do we get ourselves out of chronos and into kairos, into God's time? To live in kairos, we have to live in the present. I don't know about you, but I have a really difficult time with that. How many of you have been so concerned about the future that you never enjoy the present? I am struggling to enjoy the present state we're forced into. What does Ecclesiastes 3 teach us that we can all use in this journey? It teaches that we can find purpose in all that happens. King Solomon, who wrote Ecclesiastes, did not simply state the obvious facts of constantly changing circumstances and situations. He understood that God, not man, orders our lives in all of the changes of life. God is there in the center of it all. Without God, these changes would seem senseless. Without God, life is full of weariness and disappointment. C.S. Lewis said, "The future is something which everyone reaches at the rate of 60 minutes per hour, whatever he does, wherever he is. No matter how fast we push for tomorrow, it won't matter. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." Living in the present is a definite part of discipleship. We can never predict God's right time. We will be spared very few, if any, of those experiences that are explained in Ecclesiastes. Some are going to experience more than others, and these are tragic and difficult. If we, like King Solomon, can look at our experiences from the eternal perspective of God, we can say, this is not the end of the world. With God's help, I can get through this. With God's help, we will get through this. It is difficult to give thanks in the middle of a difficult situation, yet nothing can separate us from the love of God. We can daily give thanks for his enduring love, if nothing else. I believe that this is the right time for us to deepen our relationship with Christ. I'm trying to make daily steps in my faith, and I hope you will too. Pastor Penny has asked us to make time to pray daily at noon. Let's do it. Know that we are all gathered to pray in spirit. Even if you're the only one in the room, Christ is there with you, and through him, you are with all of us. This will be another chapter in my faith journey, as I am sure it will be in yours too. I want to finish with the remainder of this reading from Ecclesiastes. What gain has the worker from his toil? I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. That is God's gift to man. I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done it so that people fear before him. That which is already has been. That which is to be already has been. And God seeks what has been driven away. Let's find that relationship with Christ and deepen it. Till we see each other again, I love you all, and I am praying for you and with you.